No, this is very interesting. That is and so in terms of the scale of the place,
Yeah.
and kind of the kind of what is that structural setup like? Is it like something underground, or is it like
Well, that's where, again, we have some good banter with our particle physics colleagues because, CERN tops it all in terms of sheer physical scale.
yeah,
Our detectors are only 4 kilometers long, compared with the one over there.
yeah,
4 kilometers is still pretty impressive,
yeah, of
So
course, yeah,
if you go to LIGO and stand in the central control hub building, then what you basically see is the 2 arms stretching off to the horizon at right angles to each other.
Mm.
And inside those 2 concrete tubes are vacuum conditions. Now that's where we do start to put CERN to shame, because it's like a billionth of an atmosphere in there, because even a stray air molecule could knock the laser beam enough to wipe out the signal. So what we like to say is that, CERN is definitely the most complex scientific instrument ever built, but ours is the most sensitive. I mean, it has to be, otherwise we wouldn't detect anything.
Yeah.
In many ways, the engineering challenges are similar. Ours are maybe not quite on the same physical scale as CERN's, but what we've got to have is a better vacuum, more stable lasers. We've got to have the optics incredibly well polished and precise so that we don't lose any of the laser light as it's bouncing back and forth. So, it shares many of the issues that CERN does. You've got to really push the limits of technology and engineering to make all of this possible.
Okay, and so just so I think I can complete a bit of my understanding. And so you set up your experiment. Everything is like not moving. Basically, you've sucked out. You've got the vacuum. And so when it comes to the actual detection, what does the signal look like?
Sure. Right. So if you've got 2 black holes, just like the very first one we observed, you'll see all this in the various talks that I'll send you links to. When those black holes collided, what they did was they orbited around each other and spiraled in towards each other. So in fact, they had probably been doing that for millions of years. But when they were further apart, we couldn't detect the gravitational waves produced then because they were too weak. And they were also way too low a frequency. And it was only during the final moments, just before the black holes merged, that the signal had become strong enough and high enough in frequency that it became within the range of our detectors.
Wow.
But, as these things were kind of barreling towards each other, orbiting around and round, well, they reached that point where the frequency was high enough that we could begin to detect it. But of course, they were still getting closer and closer together. So the frequency kept on increasing. And it produced a pattern that we call a chirp, a bit like a bird chirping, where the frequency would rise, it would go like increase like that. I know that doesn't sound like a bird, but that characteristic form where the frequency goes up and the strength, the amplitude also goes up. That was the pattern we were looking for. So in fact, in the press conference where we announced the first discovery, we played that sound, and it came to be used a lot. There was a proms concert in 2016 where a Dutch musician wrote a piece of music using that chirp sound incorporated. And I had to do a talk at the Albert Hall before the proms concert to explain all the science behind it. But in a way, none of that really mattered. You could just kind of listen to the music and listen to the sound. So she played around with this same idea that you were trying to get this chirp pattern against a background, a kind of cacophonous background of the orchestra. And that was very much like what we had to do as well.
I might look into that frequency thing. To similarly maybe incorporate it in some way.
That would be great. I'll leave that to you.
I'm gonna have a look at that. That's really cool.
Our experience as kind of amateurs on the musical side is that exploring that analogy has generally proven to be quite effective with audiences.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's really cool.
Yeah.